The more spending power or disposable income in the hands of Ghanaians, the more flourishing will be the small business sector and the Guyana economy generally. Therefore, the high levels of poverty and economic insecurity on the current PPP regime will continue to strangle growth and opportunity for small businesses. In short, the ad hoc and inadequate measures by the PPP regime will not convert the small business sector into a pathway to prosperity for many Guyanese. A more cohesive and holistic approach is needed, starting with greater and easier access to grants and soft loans. But all of this is beyond the competence and vision of the PPP. Third, there is no pathway to prosperity presently existing through higher education. Our university and other graduates of tertiary institutions continue to migrate at the first opportunity. Attracting and retaining skills in a developing country such as ours are undoubtedly major challenges for many governments. While a government can do nothing about the strong pull factors that exist in the developed world, the PPP has exacerbated the push factors of the brain drain. They have failed to offer attractive salaries, benefits, and work conditions. They continue to politicize and deprofessionalize the workforce and to show open hostility towards the working class. Even as we work to raise salaries and benefits for graduates of the university and other tertiary institutions, a coalition government will ensure that this category of Guyanese, like all other categories, feel respected, appreciated, and needed. Stopping the brain drain is a monumental task, but we are confident that a coalition government can do much better to create a pathway to prosperity for citizens with tertiary education. 4, no pathway to prosperity presently exists through financial investments. Under the PPP regime, few pathways exist for Guyanese who may wish to supplement their income or establish a livelihood through financial investment in stocks, government bills, and bonds, and business partnerships and association. The next coalition government will create such opportunities. While there is no opportunity for ordinary people, the PPP is distributing Guyana's wealth to its elite, friends, families, and favorites. Ordinary Guyanese of all ethnic groups are experiencing economic challenges and marginalization and can see no path to prosperity. Guyana is now governed by a wealthy PPP elite group at the expense of the masses of the ordinary Guyanese people. The coalition will implement our people-centered development strategy, which will provide several pathways for ordinary Guyanese to earn enough and more to live a decent and comfortable life. We will create an opportunity society where people can choose the best pathways to earn livable incomes and establish economic security. We will ensure that economic growth and development will be inclusive, where no citizen is excluded by virtue of poverty, deprivation, unemployment, low income and no savings, social marginalization, and ethnic, political, and economic discrimination. 24 days have passed, still no commission of inquiry into the Mahdia dormitory fire. As we stated at last week's press conference, we will not relent in our call for an independent commission of inquiry into the Mahdia dormitory fire. 74 painful days have elapsed. The government continues to dilly-dally in the hope that the matter will fade from the national conscience. It will not. The more the government stalls in appointing an independent committee, then the more it exposes itself as an uncaring, callous government. It exposes its disregard for the collective pain and grief of the nation. It also reveals its intention to bury the matter in the hope that grieving parents and the nation will soon forget and move on. It exposes its tendency to put Freedom House first and foremost, even to the extent of protecting incompetent PPP ministers and officials, regardless of cost to the citizens and nation. In this regard, we must note the government's protection of Nigel Dharamlal, against whom serious allegations of rape were leveled. The same is true about Barajak Deo, against whom serious allegations of bribery and corruption have been made. Though their voices and votes, the Guyanese people will not allow the PPP to get away without full accountability, liability, and responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I will open the floor for questions on the press statement. Mr. Adam Harris.
Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're hearing you.
All right. This question is based on the Madhya situation. The Commonwealth leader said 74 is late and no commission of inquiry. Is the party aware that from July 3rd up to Monday, the government was sending in a team headed by Anil Nandalal to, my words, bully the residents to accept the $5 million, forcing them to sign and preventing them from even meeting with their relatives outside of their community, those people who are at Madhya hoping to see them?
Yes, the party is aware. Our activists on the ground would have informed us. We indicated to our activists that they must be proactive to ensure that those people are respected and the government does not succeed in bullying those persons. We are of the view that the government is responsible. In fact, more should have been done to make them responsible. But we also previously point out, and will continue to point out, that the compensation of $5 million is not only inadequate, it is disrespectful. While it is true that one cannot quantify the cost of one's life, we have said that in simple libel and defamation cases, people are offered $20 million and more. Why is it this uncaring government will feel that it should give to those families $5 million and expect them to accept it? It is unacceptable.
Thank you.
Follow up, please.
Go ahead.
Is there any legal measure? Look, I'm not a lawyer. On Monday, they carried the document to sign, some signed. Those who signed, many couldn't read. How legal is the signing in that case? Bearing in mind that some of them took the $500,000 that was offered in advance. How legal is the signing of a document without legal advice and apparently on duress?
Well, I know for sure signing on duress is not a legal act. The other elements of the legalities I will leave to the lawyers. But outside of that, a government has a moral obligation to treat its citizens with respect. We have seen across this country that the PPP regime believes that it has the right to treat people as they like. And so I think there has to be a national confrontation on this issue. The fact that if somebody cannot sign officially, as I understand it, a thumbprint should be used. But people should not be forced to sign anything. Additionally, we believe that the compensation is inadequate. Why would a government, knowing full well that if it had happened to one of their children, will not accept $5 million? They are showing a contempt for the indigenous people, and that is worrying. So it is something we will ask our legal people to look at, but I don't want to pronounce on the legality, except I know if you're forcing people is duress, and that is not acceptable under the law. And I know that the compensation is clearly inadequate and could be challenged.
Thank you. Mr. Dennis Chabot. Mr. Chabot? All right, he is unmuted, but I'm not getting any sound from him. Any other questions on the press statement?
Yeah, Dennis, can you hear?
Hearing now?
Yes, we're now hearing you.
Yeah, my apology. Mr. Norton, a question to you, or preferably to Mr. Lowe. Were your government to be elected tomorrow, perhaps in 2025, could you give us at today's figures how much it can cost in total for some of your plans, like the rent assistance program, the utility bill relief program, and the early childhood care and education plan, as well as increase in the cost, increase in government salaries? What do you think this can cost Guyana on an annual basis were you to be elected in 2025, or perhaps even tomorrow, theoretically speaking?
Thank you very much, Mr. Cabral. As you've noted there, that's a wide range of programs. Our intention is to phase in these programs. And so we have an idea of cost for various programs. As an example, we believe that the increase in public sector salaries over the course of the first few years will be as much as 60 billion over the course of the first few years as we phase those increases in. And as I said, there are quite a few other programs such as water relief that will cost a few billion in addition. You will also know that we've spoken about making the University of Guyana free and providing additional funding for that. That will be upwards of around about $10 to $15 billion over the course of the first few years. We have estimates of our general overall spending. We don't want to put out the final estimate yet, as this is a number that varies quite a bit as Guyana's population continues to grow and we get more census data. But I hope that gives you some perspective on, first of all, our approach, which is to say we will phase in these programs. But second of all, some of the sums that we're looking at. The public servant sum, I know, is one that many people have at the top of their mind.
Have you got any specific figures in the rent-to-own plan and the utility bill reform program?
Regarding the utility bills for electricity and for water, for those will cost at the beginning, we're looking at around about $10 billion will be the cost for those programs. But the reason for that is that, remember, we're targeting households that use lower than a certain amount of electricity and lower than a certain amount of water monthly. And so we're not looking at those who will be consuming a lot of electricity. And so as a result, those are not, the most expensive programs that we're looking at least regarding the utility program. The rent assistance program, that is something where the costs will vary a bit depending on how we phase that in. So I don't want to give a direct number on that quite yet.
Could I also add that in our presentation, we made it very clear that we believe a lot of the budgetary allocations under this government goes to corruption. and that it is our intention to take measures to reduce corruption so that those resources will be available for the development of our people. As I understand it, one has to allocate resources based on your priority. You have a present budget of 800 and something billion, in which about 45% or more is allocated to infrastructure. While we will develop infrastructure, we anticipate they will be cut in terms of the waste, and that we have a more structured approach to infrastructure. And I give you a practical example. Here's the government now talking about 4-lane highway on the embankment. Now, this government this year and last year spent money to build 2-lane bridges. That is clearly a waste. Additionally, I do not think, and a lot of people do not think, you need to disturb the lives of people on that highway, on that embankment road, to put a 4-lane highway when you have adequate land behind that you can utilize without displacing people. I notice on the quarantine, businessmen are complaining about seeking to put a 4-lane highway there and disrupt their economic life. I'm interested to see how the government approaches that in relation to how they are approaching the embankment, because we see they begin to do work on the embankment. We also see a dangerous trend across the country that we must be careful with. We must remember we are a low-lying coastal state. We must remember that we need adequate drainage. And a lot of these programs, they are narrowing the drains to put roads. And I do not think that that is a sensible thing to do, but we'll see where it goes.
Thank you. Any other questions on the press statement? Mr. Harris?
I go one off the press statement, but it's all right. I don't know if anybody else got any.
Well, let me just, any other questions on the first statement just before we open the floor for? All right, Mr. Harris, you can go ahead.
Yeah. This has to do with some charges that were filed, what, 2.5 years ago against some people for electoral fraud. Some of these people were locked up. To date, nothing is happening. Is there anything at all that the party can do to expedite these cases or have lawyers to be dismissed or out?
Well, first of all, from the inception, the party indicated that these were trumped up charges and that the purpose of them was for harassment, political harassment. The purpose of them was to intimidate, to instill fear. And so we are cognizant of the fact that it was never anything about law. As it relates to what the lawyers will do, I believe at some time they will have to move to have them dismissed. But for now, as far as I know, the lawyers are living with the fact that they go, there is no case, and another date is chosen.
Thank you. All right, the floor is open for any other questions.
Mr. Norton, Dennis Chabrol again, sir. Sir, can you say when is your general council scheduled for?
That's an internal matter of the party. I don't have to say it in the public domain, and our central executive will determine when our general council is. It has been identified, but I don't know that it's a matter of public interest. It's a party matter where we discuss internal party affairs. And like I indicated to you before, we're not one to run down the road of engaging in our internal party matters.
But Mr. Norton, how do you rationalize your position given the fact that your party is one of the largest parties in the country, and it is there to serve the public and the public's interest?
We continue to serve the public's interest, but I don't know telling everybody when will be our general counsel will serve the public interest and how.
Okay.
In fact, I don't even
Well,
know.
there have been
I don't even know why it has become a matter of any consequence at this stage.
because it has not been held in almost 2 years.
Well, that is not true, but I can permit you to be distant from the facts.
So then I know that there have been internal calls, in fact, at least one in writing from one of your executive members seeking general counsel be held in 30 days. So hence the question.
Well, like I said to you, the central executive of our party at its last meeting made a decision on general counsel. It's our internal matter. The people in the party are aware of it, and that is what I'll say on that.
Thank you.
Mr. Norton, when the mayors and the deputy mayors are sworn in, to the best of my knowledge, our constitution provides for them to be part of one of the decision-making arms of the party, or the general counsel. Correct me if I'm wrong. To what extent now will the new faces in your decision-making body as a result of their election as mayors and deputy mayors assist you in better decision-making and political decision-making in your party, and of course, in trying to influence the way the country is governed?
First of all, even before they're sworn in, they're involved in the process, and they inform what we are doing. There are mayors or mayors-elect who will call, will give their ideas, we engage them, etc. I don't know what you're talking about, but the level at which mayors and deputy mayors are involved are many levels. First, if you're a party member, you're involved at the level of the group. If you are involved at the district level, you'll be involved. The only institution I know in the party in which mayor and deputy mayor are entitled to attend once they are members of the party is the general council.
Thank you. I see the hand of Ms. Wilbur. Notes.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. Mr. Norton, just a few questions. Given the government marking 3 years in office, what are your thoughts on its performance to date and some of the key achievements that should have been made at this point in time? In addition to that question, can you say what are your thoughts on the legislative agenda for the oil and gas sector? Secondly, we heard recently that the Guyana Revenue Authority is suffering with a particular challenge, or is grappling with a particular challenge, and that pertains to the poaching of staff. It's an issue that is also affecting many other aspects of the society, industries as well. Can you say what is the opposition's proposed solution to the labor shortage that we're experiencing? Where should we turn to for immediate intervention? And thirdly, the audits, we have 2 audits on ExxonMobil's expenses that have yet to be completed, and we have marked the 3rd year of the PPP in office. Can you say what is the opposition's reaction to the fact that the results of neither of these activities have been made public? And fourthly, we've yet to see a resource upgrade, though ExxonMobil is making several discoveries since we last heard that there's over 11 billion barrels in the Stabroek block. Do you think it's high time for Guyana to embark on its own independent analysis of what these reserves hold? Thank you.
All right. Let me start with the GRA staff position. We have long said that this is linked to the wages and salaries we pay. If you are not paying competitive wages and salaries, then what will happen is people will go where the wages and salaries are higher. You would recognize that when we were in government, we spent a lot of time and resources improving the lives of the people by giving them higher salaries, etc., so that we can retain them. I believe that one of the positions that we have to take is to increase the salaries, etc. Then there is the wider problem of the absence of planning and training by the regime. When I saw the government talking about importing drivers, I find it laughable. You can train a driver in 3 months, just for the want of a particular time frame. Now, is the government suggesting that with the high level of unemployment in this society, they cannot develop a program to train drivers so that they are available for the oil and gas sector and other areas? It is incumbent on any government to do an analysis of the skills needs of a country and ensure that their training divisions are training people to satisfy those needs. And so it is my own view that it is government incompetence that is causing the problems. We knew well that the oil and gas sector is on stream and that there are certain skills that are needed, and therefore we should have been organizing and training people to be able to satisfy that market. As it relates to the audit results, we have long established that since we know that this is a profit sharing mechanism, then for you to ensure you get your right amount from the profits, then first and foremost, you need to be able to audit those accounts. We advocated previously for the training of Guyanese with the capacity to audit these accounts. And so for us, they should have been the auditing. They must be the auditing, because auditing is critical to us getting the benefits. Independent analysis. Yes, I do believe that we should develop the capacity to do independent analysis, but the government has no interest in that. When the government came to power, they moved all the competent people with the requisite skills. I remember Dr. Vincent Adams was not only talking about training, they were actually training people, and there were plans to ensure we train the requisite skills we need in that sector. And that would have also given us the capacity to do our own independent analysis and be able to achieve the objectives we set ourselves. As it relates to the legislative agenda, I think we have outlined our position, stating when the government put out its last document that it was inadequate. I think we did an entire press conference which we identified the areas we thought there is need for improvement. In our own case, we have made it clear that moving forward, there is a mechanism for us to engage ExxonMobil, and that we will engage them to ensure we get the best for the people of Guyana.
I just wanted to follow up on some of those remarks. First of all, regarding the GRA's comments, what specifically they were speaking about is that the cost oil auditors are being poached by oil companies. Now, given the seriousness of the audit issue, it seems to me to be quite obvious that the government needs to provide the resources to the GRAs so that they can pay the appropriate salaries. The government should be supporting the GRA. This is the furthest thing from acceptable. And really, when you look at the first audit and the first audit that was leaked and the amount that could be recovered, the questionable amount, that works out really to about around about $1 million that Guyana could be losing every single day due to not auditing these oil companies. So I think it gives you an indication that the government has no understanding at all of how to run this country and of the seriousness of these issues. One of the first things that should be on their agenda is ensuring that they provide the GRA with the adequate resources, first of all, to pay staff, and second of all, to train staff so that they have the maximum capacity that we can have available. So that's one key thing. The other thing that we want to mention is that we're not seeing, as has been indicated, a final timeline as to when these audits of Guyana's offshore oil expenses will be completed. Now, what we've mentioned within our comments on the petroleum legislation is that you need to see some timelines in that legislation. You need to see some structures in there, because there's an issue that is so substantial that can have such a large impact on the country that we need to see that in the legislation. So on the one hand, we need to provide the resources so that our government bodies can carry out what they need to carry out. But on the other hand, we need to put in place timelines regarding this. The other thing that we want to mention is that regarding an independent analysis of these resources, you would think that it would be obvious to the government that they need to keep track of the increase in resources, that they need to have estimates. I won't give you an idea of our internal process. All I'll let you know is we keep track and we have estimates, because any government that is looking to properly run a country must have an idea not only of what exists, but of what will exist if current trends continue. But as the PDP is accustomed to governing by whims and fancies, you're not seeing this type of independent analysis. We also want to see the government release information that they have from the oil sector so that the public can be able to get a better sense of the developments in the sector, a better sense of projections, and so that we can see that kind of analysis both by the opposition and by civil society.
I also want to make the point that we need to focus a bit more on what is done with the money we're getting at present. We seem focused on what we'll get in the future once we engage the oil companies. But we're in a situation where our oil resources are being misused. Many of it, they are being placed in the wrong sectors and areas. And so one sees a trend that is leading to the Dutch disease.
The question regarding the performance of the government in 3 years, what you think should have been accomplished by now, and what in your book would mark down as acceptable thus far? Is there anything that has been done by the government that you're pleased with, and what do you consider to be the deficiencies?
Well, what I consider to be the deficiencies. Okay, first of all, I think at the general level, I don't think the government has worked out its development strategy and how it intends to use oil resources to diversify the economy. For instance, I've said before, we need to use oil resources to develop agriculture in all regions. Regions 1, particularly 7, 8, 9, and 10. The focus still continues to be 2, 3, 5, 6, and part of 4. We are not seeing enough being done in terms of using the resources to develop agro-processing. Then the question of cheap electricity is a critical question if we are going to develop and diversify. We're not seeing the government having any structured program to bring cheap electricity. All we hear is about the gas to shore project without any proper feasibility studies, etc. And that looks very much like we're going to throw money down a hole in which we don't know where it would end up. So we are deeply concerned that resources are not being used to develop and give us cheap energy. But more importantly, we have long said that a country's development is dependent on its human resource development. And the government is not putting the kind of resources needed into human resource development. And even with talks about goal, the programs are not geared towards helping us to train the human resources we need to deal with the extant situation and propel us into the future. Now, we are talking and saying, look, we want to have a people-centered development strategy, meaning we believe in all we do, including the use of oil resources, we must put the people first. We must seek to get rid of poverty, or in the first instance, reduce it and ultimately get rid of it. And we are not seeing actions in that direction. And that is why we are outlining regularly the elements of our people-centered development strategy that will allow us to put resources in the hands of our people to ensure that they develop. We have not seen, like we've said in the press statement, enough resources being allocated to small and micro businesses. What we are seeing is a parade of handouts. Every day you wake up, Vice President Jack, there's somewhere sharing out 250,000. That is unacceptable. What you need is a structured approach to putting resources in the hands of our people, into businesses, so that we can develop. If there is any area, I would say, I feel comfortable, and I don't know I'm totally comfortable, but there was the establishment of the Natural Resource Fund, but there are still limitations and shortcomings that we need to deal with to ensure that that fund serves us in good stead. Today in Parliament, the government is coming to extend the debt ceiling. Now, we don't have a problem with a government borrowing. I want that to be made clear. Once you have sensible choices, where the problem lies is that this government borrows and then money is misappropriated, it is poorly allocated, and therefore in the long term, this borrowing can become a burden for us. And so we are in opposition to the extension of the raising of the debt limit in the present circumstance, where the government seems to have no plan and they are just taking money and putting it in all directions, aiming at bribing the electorate to be re-elected. And that is unacceptable. We need a structured approach to government. There isn't even institutional capacity building. No work has been done to build the capacity of the Environmental Protection Agency. In fact, under this government, it has been made a toothless poodle. There is no institutional development in terms of the natural resource sector. And all of those things will contribute to our failure. And so for us, in the 3 years, what the government did a lot was be involved in corruption, manifest its incompetence, and and advocated to the world that they are not serious about the development of the people of Guyana. What you're seeing is the allocation of a lot of our resources to the PPP elite, their friends, families, etc. But the wide spectrum of Guyanese people of all ethnic groups, they are facing difficulties. There is no attempt to deal with the high cost of living. There is no attempt to deal with unemployment. And so for us, Guyana now is worse off than it was in 2020, even though it has oil resources. And mind you, not worse off for all Guyanese, for most Guyanese. The PPP elite, their friends and families, they are enjoying themselves.
Just to build off of that, one of the things that's really important for us to recognize is we have to raise our standards when it is that the government, first of all, has access to huge revenues, and second of all, is producing very large budgets. And so it is not acceptable for the government to be spending billions and billions more on, as an example, education, but you're not seeing better pass rates, but you're not seeing teachers be better compensated. So what you've seen over the course of the first 3 years is a government that is spending money, but not accomplishing the key things that we need to see accomplished. When it comes to governance, as late as 2022, the IMF has indicated that its recommendations to improve the way that Guyana is governed, the way that we spend our money, have not been followed. And as a result, over the course of a 5-year period, we would lose hundreds of billions of dollars. In fact, we could right now raise 150,000 people out of poverty if we govern the country as well as Trinidad or Jamaica or St. Lucia. But we're not governing this country correctly. We're not putting in place these types of recommendations. And the recommendations are made every single year. So there's multiple years that they've had the opportunity to improve governance and that they have not done so. But the issue of poverty, as the leader rightly mentioned there, is not just about savings, but about priorities. We've seen UNICEF as well as other bodies mention that Guyana has a poverty rate as high as 43%. We've not seen the government have a targeted approach at dealing specifically with the issue of poverty. The leader has made many remarks in his budget speech about ways to address poverty, and we put forward many proposals. Has the government, by any metric, reduced poverty substantially over the course of the last 3 years? Now, what we've seen is that because of the high rise in the cost of living and stagnant wages, there's concern that poverty has actually increased. Now, folks, we have to hold this in the context of a government that has, from 2018 to now, really, but over the course of the past few years, we've seen the national budget explode. It's basically tripled. And so if you're spending lots of money and you're not improving your key metrics, then all you can say is that your efforts have been a failure. One example you can even point to is the University of Guyana still not being free. Now the government will say, oh, they said 5 years. But last year, because of the high oil price, we got an additional $60 billion of revenue. That's something like 12 years of free UG. The government could easily be doing this. The government budget is $782 billion. The UG free is just a few billion. It is that the government doesn't understand what its priorities really should be, and that the government doesn't understand that just spending money for the sake of spending money is not the same as moving the country forward. And so after 3 years, what you've seen is a government that is willing to, as the pointed out, support its elite friends, family, and favorites, but not actually move the country in the right direction.
Thank you. All right, so at this time, if there is any final.
Yeah, please. One quick one.
Okay, go ahead.
And this is become related. Why is there no pressure on the government to confirm the Chancellor and Chief Justice? And secondly, again, same thing. Why no move to have the mayors and deputy mayors sworn in?
All right. Why no pressure on the government? Well, I think the opposition has made its position clear. We have agreed that the present Chancellor and Chief Justice could be appointed. They have served. They are competent, and therefore they should be appointed. You're aware that in a response to one of my letters, the president very arrogantly said that he will do it when he thinks it is necessary. There have been some pressures from the CCJ, the president demanding that it be done, but it has to be part of the wider society. You know, sometimes I arrive at the conclusion that people believe that everything has to be achieved only by the opposition. Civil society can add their voice to this. The Guyana Bar Association can add their voices. And if you're not getting the addition of those voices, then the government will be as recalcitrant as they are. Now, as it relates to the mayors and deputy mayors, as far as I know, normally before this election, the president and all the presidents before, in a very timely manner, would have sworn in the mayor and deputy mayor. I gained the impression that this president seems not to understand the importance of the mayor and deputy mayors. And so for some reason, it has taken more than a month since the election. In fact, on the 12th of June, August will be 2 months since the last election. Again, I think the PPP has set a record for the most tardy and recalcitrant government as it relates to the swearing of the mayor and deputy mayor. It is our hope that they will be sworn in early and begin to work. Now, there isn't much you can do when this thing falls within the purview of a recalcitrant president. And you don't know if it is his decision or his boss's decision. So we'll wait and see.
Thank you. All right, at this time, I want to thank our media personnel for joining today's press conference, and we do hope that you have a good day and same to our viewers. Good afternoon.